Wanna play hide and clap?
What's up, guys? Welcome back to Screen Lab. And today, we have a special treat for all you horror enthusiasts out there, as we will be counting down the top 10 horror movies you must watch before you die. Stay tuned as we will be showing you the 1996 horror film that redefined the slasher genre, which stars our favorite friend, Courtney Cox, and our favorite angel, Drew Barrymore. Spoiler alert, only one survives. Number 10, Get Out. We begin our list with one of the most brilliant horror films in modern cinema. Jordan Peele's Get Out became an overnight sensation when it was released in 2017. The film was a commercial and critical success, and deservedly won an Oscar for Peele in his directorial debut. Get Out's massive appeal is that it masterfully manages to weave two concepts that haven't been done in the past: horror and racism. The end result is a haunting yet satisfying experience that never feels forced for the audience. The film follows Chris Washington, played by Daniel Kaluuya, as he hesitantly agrees to meet the family of his white girlfriend, Rose Armitage, played by Allison Williams. As Chris finally meets Rose's family, his hesitation turns into a nightmare, as it is revealed that the Armitage family preys on black people due to their physical characteristics, and Chris was their next target.
I'm good, actually.
Number 9, 28 Days Later. Credits to George A. Romero, who essentially jump-started the zombie horror genre, directing Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, and Day of the Dead. But aside from Romero, nobody had big success with the genre, which resulted in the 80s and 90s being a total dud for flesh-eating zombies. But with the release of 2002's 28 Days Later, a film directed by Danny Boyle and written by Alex Garland, the zombie franchise saw a literal resurrection. Unlike Romero's radioactive rotting corpses, the zombies in 28 Days Later were a result of a virus originating from a rabid chimpanzee, the first ever zombie film to use the concept of a virus being the main cause of the spread. The film also introduced our worst nightmares: zombies with unlimited stamina. In the film, we see Jim, played by Cillian Murphy, waking up from a coma and walking around the deserted streets of London. Moments later, audiences are then treated with the sight of ultra-fast zombies for the very first time. Jim then encounters a number of survivors along the way, and the film essentially turns into a battle of survival where we don't only see humans fending off zombies, but humans fighting other humans as well.
Get that cleaned off.
Number 8, Ringu. Japan's impact on Western culture is immense. Among their many contributions to the world include sushi, ramen, green tea, Pikachu, PlayStation, and, most importantly, the girl who comes out of a television screen. Upon its release in 1998, Ringu became a worldwide sensation, with its creepy antagonist Sadako becoming the new face of the horror genre. The film even spawned an American remake, The Ring, starring Naomi Watts. Although being a good movie, it failed to live up to the success of the original. Ringu is based loosely on a 14th century Japanese legend, a girl who throws herself in a well and haunts her master after becoming a ghost. In the movie, we follow newspaper reporter Reiko Asakawa, played by Nanako Matsushima, investigating the death of her niece and 3 other people, with the deaths connected to a supposedly cursed videotape. As Reiko watches the tape herself, she suddenly gets a phone call, now becoming Sadako's next target. The distorted video wherein Sadako crawls out of a well and then crawls out from the TV screen to kill her victims remains to be one of the most terrifying scenes ever in cinema. Thank goodness she can't crawl out from our phones while we're watching YouTube. Number 7, Rosemary's Baby. The 1960s saw Psycho dominate the horror genre, but towards the end of the decade, one film would overtake Alfred Hitchcock's classic, and it continues to be one of horror's most influential movies to date. Roman Polanski directs this 1968 classic and stars Mia Farrow as Rosemary Woodhouse and Ruth Gordon in her Oscar-winning turn as Minnie Castevet. In the film, Rosemary and her husband Guy move into a New York City apartment despite being warned of the apartment's haunted past. As Rosemary gets pregnant, she soon realizes that her neighbors, the Castevets, and the apartment's tenants are not who they seem they are. Rosemary's Baby is a slow burn, but it's a horrifying take on witchcraft and also has one of the creepiest endings in any horror film.
Well, let me know if you change your mind.
Number 6. Scream. The movie that defined 90s horror, Scream, is a bloody yet satirical take on the horror slasher genre, which had become stale during the 1990s. Wes Craven, the man behind A Nightmare on Elm Street, The Hills Have Eyes, The Last House on the Left, and Swamp Thing, is the man at the helm, and remarkably revived the genre that had lost its charm. Released in 1996, Scream is one of the most profitable horror movies ever made, and launched the careers of Neve Campbell, David Arquette, Courtney Cox, and Drew Barrymore. In the movie, the fictional town of Woodsboro is awoken after a series of gruesome murders. The killing spree continues at a house party, where the masked killer, named Ghostface, picks off the teenagers one by one.
What's your favorite scary movie?
Scream is a quintessential slasher film, a movie that doesn't take itself too seriously, but is filled with enough gore to keep audiences glued in their seats for the movie's entire duration. Still there? Keep the lights on and watch until the end of the video to know which Stanley Kubrick classic keeps us scared of entering any room that has the numbers 237 written on the door. Number 5. Insidious. Horror is a genre like no other, and every now and then, we get a movie completely different from its predecessors, changing the horror landscape for at least the next 5 to 10 years. Insidious, released in 2011, is a prime example. Ever since 1999's The Blair Witch Project, low-budget indie horror films have catapulted the genre in a new direction. Paranormal Activity, Sinister, and It Follows gave us some great scares, but when it comes to the king of low-budget horror films, Insidious tops them all. In the film, we follow Josh and Renee Lambert, played by Patrick Wilson and Rose Byrne, as they deal with the tragedy of their son Dalton, who had fallen into a coma. As Dalton, played by Ty Simpkins, is brought home after months of failed treatments, supernatural activities start to commence in the Lambert household. Director James Wan doesn't hold back on the jump scares and drawn-out scenes filled with dread, leaving audiences quite stressed for the entire duration of the film. The smiling family in Josh's astral projection and the voice coming out from the baby monitor were scenes that completely knocked us off our seats. But the best scene, the scene which now makes us scared of encountering ghosts in broad daylight, the red-faced demon appearing behind Josh's head. Number 4. A Nightmare on Elm Street. The 1970s witnessed the birth of slasher films. The release of Halloween and Friday the 13th paved the way for a new generation of horror flicks. But the plot in these films was mostly the same. A group of teenagers getting murdered viciously by a psychopathic killer. A breath of fresh air was badly needed in the genre. Enter 1984's A Nightmare on Elm Street. Although the plot follows a familiar setting, it also utilized a supernatural element that was absent in previous movies. A monster who preys on his victims in their dreams. Wes Craven, considered as one of the fathers of modern horror, creates a film that is both entertaining and gruesome, while introducing audiences to eventually horror's most recognizable icon, Freddy Krueger. And if you ever wondered where Johnny Depp got his big break, it's this movie. Although he dies brutally as Freddy grabs him from his mattress with blood splattering all over the room.
Don't fall asleep.
Number 3. Alien. One of the best horror films of all time, and also one of the best science fiction films, if not the best science fiction of all time. Ladies and gentlemen, we give you Alien. Before its release in 1979, there was none quite like it. The movie was ahead of its time, and became an inspiration for hundreds of science fiction movies that followed it. Alien also became one of the first science fiction films to have a female lead, Sigourney Weaver, portraying the no-nonsense and determined Ellen Ripley. It also helps to have the multi-talented Ridley Scott behind the camera, who would then go on to direct classics such as Blade Runner, Gladiator, and Black Hawk Down. Alien follows Ripley and her crew on a return trip back to Earth, when suddenly they get a distress signal coming from a nearby moon. The movie would have ended then and there if the crew just ignored the transmission. But as the crew lands on the moon and investigates the area, it won't be long before we encounter the ugliest and most gruesome thing we have ever seen on the big screen. a 7-foot-tall creature that spits acid, climbs walls, and has a tongue that can easily pierce human flesh. Let's just leave it at that. Number 2. The Exorcist. There is something about horror films with religious themes that make them truly terrifying. The Exorcist, released in 1973, tackles those themes brilliantly and didn't pull any punches throughout its 121-minute runtime. Grotesque and horrifying, the film created controversy as audiences were reported to have vomited and fainted inside cinemas, with the film also banned in the UK for 11 years. But the controversy didn't stop The Exorcist from winning 2 Oscars and becoming one of the most successful horror films of all time. The film follows Lancaster Marin, a Catholic priest played by the magnificent Max von Sydow, as he attempts to heal a demon-possessed Regan McNeil, played by Linda Blair, through an exorcism. As we sympathize with Marin's efforts to heal the 12-year-old Regan, we are also given some terrifying sights through Rachel's possessed form: the headspin, the spider walk, the vomit, and the crucifix stabbing. Unsettling? You have no idea. And number 1, The Shining. You know we'd never forget Johnny, right?
Here's Johnny!
During its initial release in 1980, the film was met with lukewarm reviews and a disappointing box office return. To add to that, director Stanley Kubrick was even nominated for Worst Director at the inaugural Razzies. But just like all things, time eventually changes people's perspectives. Soon enough, people didn't just get to love The Shining, but considered it as one of the greatest horror films of all time. The film takes place in the isolated Overlook Hotel, where we follow Jack Torrance, played by Jack Nicholson, as he plunges further into his hallucinations. He then becomes a homicidal maniac who wants to murder his wife Wendy, played by Shelley Duvall, and his son, played by Danny Lloyd. To make things worse for the Torrance family, ghosts appear in the hotel as well. Despite initial mixed reactions, The Shining managed to bounce back through a cult following, and it wasn't long before the film's ambiguous and terrifying imagery became the most recognizable scenes in the horror genre. Wendy screaming as Jack chops down the door, the twins inviting Danny to play with them forever, Wendy fending off Jack with a baseball bat, and Jack entering the demon-filled room 237. The Shining is undoubtedly the ultimate horror movie. So there you have it. Of all the films we've listed, which one frightened you the most? Leave something for us in the comments section. If you enjoyed this video and can't wait for our next content, click the notification bell to keep track of our latest uploads. With that being said, you should definitely watch the 8 best action movies of all time. And of course, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. And if you're a big fan of horror, share this video with your family and friends. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.